Welcome, my name is Bob Felt, and I'm your host of Hyde Talk. Hyde Talk is an open and honest conversation focused on character, leadership, education, and parenting. On our very first podcast here at Hyde Talk, we have a special guest. That's Laura Gauld, president of Hyde School. Little background on Laura. After graduating from Hyde School in 1976, Laura graduated from the University of Southern Maine and later received a master's degree from Columbia University in organizational psychology and change leadership. Laura is a published author, public speaker, and has established herself as a leading expert on helping parents raise teenagers with character. With 40 years of experience as an educator, mentor, and role model, it's my pleasure to introduce our first guest to Hyde Talk, Laura Gauld. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you, Bob.
Well, you and I have known each other for almost 40 years, so I get the pleasure of working with you and talking to you every day. So I'm really excited to have you as our first guest to be able to talk to our listeners a little bit about you, your story, parenting, education as it plays out in our world today. So let's just jump right into it. I need to ask you why, 40 years ago, what was the draw? What really drew you into becoming a teacher?
Gosh, I have to remember back, but I think obviously it started with the experience I had here at Hyde School. I came to Hyde School as a sophomore, spent 3 years here. I was a student that I looked like a winner on all those exterior achievement aspects of school, but I didn't feel like a winner inside. And I didn't always have that rock-solid confidence. I came to this school, and the teachers here had a huge impact on me, along with the character approach. And I knew when I left here that I wanted to provide that to other kids.
You've been doing this, sorry to keep going back to 40 years. But you've got tons of experience working with high school students and parents. What do you see today in our world as like the biggest issues facing kids and parents? And maybe just start with the kids and then we'll get to the parents.
Of course, everybody knows that there are huge issues out there. We always have had issues. It's always been hard, especially for an adolescent, to go through adolescence, try to put your life together, try to navigate the social pressures of being a teenager. But of course, today we have post-COVID and the screen addiction of kids. We just have so many deep issues. I would say the biggest ones are addiction to screens, lack of confidence, rise of anxiety, depression, feeling isolated, not knowing how to deal with each other because you have a screen in front of you. And so when you have a person next to you and you have to try to navigate and build a meaningful relationship, those skills are lacking. It's so pervasive. There was a study that the CDC put out a couple years ago that surveyed almost 8,000 high school students, all types of high schools, rural, urban, suburban. 44% of students in high school talked about this pervasive sadness and hopelessness that got in the way of them being able to participate in school activities and social activities.
Well, let me ask you too, sorry to cut you off, but you have the students, but then take the parents who are raising teenagers today. What do you see as their biggest challenge, their biggest issues that they're facing today?
Well, of course, the biggest issue is the parents are also isolated. So when I was growing up, the whole neighborhood could effectively discipline you, support you, challenge you when you were off track. If a father told you to go home, you knew. You went home and because you knew your parents were going to support that dad. Today, unfortunately, in many places, parents don't feel that support. So they're left trying to do it themselves and feeling isolated. And also, I think parents today get caught up in, we want a relationship with our kids. My parents didn't want a relationship with me. They had their own friends. Their job was to raise me. And of course, later, I had a very close relationship with them. I got more caught up as a parent wanting a relationship with my kids. And so I had to learn that that's not really what they needed from me. They needed me and they needed us to be parents and to guide them and to be the example of the principles that we needed to model in our family.
I mean, you're talking about your parents. I mean, can I just ask, what were some of the big takeaways, things that you learned from your parents?
Oh gosh, I learned so much. I mean, my own, we all have our own journey. As a young child, my real father passed away in a car accident. And so my mom was a single mom for, I think, 3 or 4 or 5 years. That was in the South. She had been raised to be a debutante. She had to go out and she had to redefine her life. So she showed incredible courage and always has. And then later I had a stepfather who initially I didn't particularly care for, but he made a commitment to raise us. He wasn't interested in being our friend. And so I gained so much work ethic. His integrity was rock solid. And of course, eventually I grew to respect him, and then the deep love came.
Yeah, that's great. Well, let me switch focus to, Hyde School. And, school's been around since 1966. You were a graduate in 1976. How, in your years of experience, how have you seen Hyde School's approach to education evolve over the years since you were a student and graduated in 1976? What changes have you seen?
I think there's been tremendous change, and there's also been an ongoing commitment to the core of Hyde. The core of Hyde is believing that every individual has a unique potential that defines your destiny. So we believe in this school that all people have dignity and worth. We also believe that if you focus on character development, that will lay the foundation for meaningful achievement, success in life, relationships. The list goes on and on. I think the biggest changes is we've evolved from ways to help students in the 60s and the 70s you learn aren't as effective in today's world. Hyde was much more confrontative back in the old days. Today I find with students, you can't really yell at a student. You can't get, students don't know how to handle that like they used to. We've also learned that we've learned a lot more about things like past experiences. Just like I said, I was this person who had experienced the loss of a parent. Back when I was a student, we didn't understand that. We didn't understand things like trauma. And so we've learned how to both put our character curriculum out there and also support students and give students the help. If a student is struggling with anxiety or loss or confidence or even, say, substance issues, they need to understand accountability, they need to understand how to move forward, and they also need the support.
And talk a little bit about, Hyde focus isn't just the kid, the student, we also help the parents. So talk a little bit about maybe some of the changes that you've seen in your time with how we're incorporating parents in the process and helping them as well.
We have found at Hyde that if you want to reach the deepest part of kids, you have two influencers, the peer group and the parents. So we work on the peer group every single day, trying to create that culture of support and being able to say the honest challenge to each other. Now, you get parents in the mix. You get parents working on themselves. You get parents working on making shifts, whether it's I need to try to be less controlling. I need to try to stand up for what's important in our family. I need to learn how to share. I need to show humility. I need to ask for help. I need to look at where's my life going and how do I go after my best. You engage parents in those things, they will be incredible role models and they will be inspirations for their children to continue to make shifts.
One of the things that many schools now is talking about, they have it on their school shield, is about character and truth and integrity and honesty. And, when I was younger, I went to a school that had the flashy shield with all these words, but honestly, we never talked about those words. They just hoped I had it, which I didn't all the time as a young student. But at Hyde, it's been at the forefront of what's going on here since 1966. How is it put into place? What's the curriculum? How is it established and presented to the students?
Well, back when the school was first founded, so almost 60 years ago, it started with 5 words. And those words today are everywhere around the school, the campus. They're etched on a big rock as you drive in. And those words are courage, integrity, curiosity, leadership, and concern. That was how Hyde character was first defined. And of course now what has flowed from that is a whole curriculum that infuses every aspect. The academic program, the athletic program, all the kids get to be involved in everything at Hyde. Leadership, public speaking, and then a family program where their parents get to come up and grow alongside their child and go through some of this process together. See, the problem, as you said, with character in many places is let's put a poster up on the wall, let's get a word of the week, let's take our slogan, but really what we're saying is you kid, you get your act together, because we adults, we're all set, okay? That's the achievement culture. Now, in a character culture, everybody, has to keep working. I can't say at 66, I've got all the courage I need. I get up every day, things present themselves to me. And so if the students see the adults in the community working on their character, the teachers, the staff, the parents, then you've got it infused in the program.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think the biggest thing, and I'm a parent, it's difficult to see our kids struggle and go through challenges. But, the world it's a big world today. There's a lot going on. How do you think Hyde prepares students for the challenges that they'll face, not so much as a high school student, but college and beyond? What's the special sauce at Hyde that helps students prepare for those challenges?
The first thing is getting a sense of who you are. So that's the self-awareness. Giving each student a sense of what are your strengths. See, a lot of kids, they don't acknowledge their strengths, okay?
Parents can certainly.
Parents will overpraise to the ends of the earth, but the kids don't know how to acknowledge their strengths. So self-awareness, what are my strengths? What are my challenges? What is holding me back? Can I get honest about it? Do I know who I am? Okay, so this is essential, right? So figuring out who you are. Then, how do you get the courage to be who you are? And of course, we believe here at Hyde School that if you tackle challenges outside of your comfort zone, you're going to learn how to develop courage, resiliency, grit. These are all things that have now been proven to be the secret sauce of success. It's not waltzing through life with no failure or no struggle.
That's what so many companies today talk about, is got a lot of smart people, but their employees lack the EQ and things like that.
And how do you get that? You get that by doing things that you're not sure you can do, whether it's get up and sing a song, pick up a sport you don't know, take a class where you feel nervous, how you're going to do. Public speaking. Biggest human fear out there is public speaking. Getting kids to do things that are difficult. And then what happens is sometimes they have success, sometimes they have failure, sometimes it's in the middle, but they learn from that and they walk away from that believing I can face anything. I can go into a situation because I'm not afraid to struggle. I'm not afraid to fail. I'm not afraid to fall down and then have to get myself back up.
So let me just ask, if I'm a parent and I'm looking at boarding schools, I mean, there's boarding schools all throughout, obviously New England, throughout the United States. But New England's really I would say the hotbed. No offense to any other places in the country. But for boarding schools, what makes Hyde unique compared to other schools?
Well, of course, there's a lot of great schools out there, and there's a lot of great boarding schools, and I have a lot of respect for many of them. I think what makes Hyde unique is, first of all, the character approach, the addition of parents growing alongside their child, and then the incredible setting. There's amazing adult role models here. We're in the beautiful state of Maine. It's an incredible campus. And so you come into a community, as I said earlier, community has been gone from schools. And then COVID just put the nail in that coffin. And so it's show up, get your grades, get your credits, get out of high school, and then magically your life is going to be put together in college. This is a community. You come into this community and you're not just known by one person, you're known by everybody. And you're known, you're seen, you're cared for, and you're challenged to be what you're capable of being, which is why so many amazing things happen here.
Well, you've worked with thousands and thousands of families, students over the years, and one of knowing you a long time, you're a great storyteller, and about people and experience. And I mean, maybe can you think of a few students that have been success stories? When I say success, I'm not talking about they've got X job, this, and they're making this amount of money. That's clearly not what Hyde is about. But when you say success, have had a transformative experience at Hyde, and also their parents. I mean, can you think of a student, a parent that comes to mind?
I can think of so many, but last couple years, a student who's, sometimes you see students where their parents have been divorced, and
which is really, really common.
Really common.
Today.
Oh, over 50%.
Yeah.
So, and then the question is, how contentious is the divorce? Can we even be in the same room together? Can we try to co-parent? Can we try to support each other? And of course, we always thought that most kids, their goal is wanting their parents to get back together. But really the goal, what kids secretly want, is their parents to get along and their parents to be able to not only just coexist, but have that larger extended family. Even though now when a student has a divorce situation, they have two families that they have to deal with. I can remember a young man whose parents really couldn't be in a room together, so much animosity. And yet they each loved their child. So they started out in our family program working on themselves with their child, but eventually they came together and they each had to, they had to take some big steps out of their comfort zone. They came together and were able to be vulnerable with each other in front of their child. And I saw the impact that that had. And that reinforced to me why parent education is critical. Because if you want to reach the deepest part of kids, you have to help the parents. And the day that person graduated and I saw the look on the student's face when the parents were able to sit together, to stand up and support, because at Hyde, every student makes a speech, and they make that speech and their parents stand up. And not all cases can that happen, but so that's just one example of something where anytime somebody in the family makes growth, it's like it creates a ripple effect for everyone.
Great story. I mean, as parents out there, the parents listening to our first, Hyde Talk, what advice would you give to parents about considering boarding school for their child?
I'm a big proponent of boarding school because obviously I've worked at one my whole educational life, but I also have gone to many other boarding schools and talked to many students and we have some teachers here on our team that really credit the community of a boarding school. So boarding schools are not for parents who want to get rid of their kids. They're not for wealthy parents who want to travel to Europe and occupy their kids. Boarding schools are environments where you can get that community back, that community that we all had decades ago. And your child, again, as I said, your child will be seen. Your child will not slip through the cracks. And it's that little bit like that kick in the bear hug. You're going to get the challenge to do something you weren't sure you could do. You're going to have a teacher. Some of those teachers are going to be lifelong mentors for you. And you're going to meet kids. My roommate, when I was at Hyde, was the godmother of our first child. We've had a lifelong relationship. You meet students from all walks of life. You get out of your bubble and you make those bonds. And when I see kids from different walks of life go visit each other, are in each other's weddings, are there when the tough times happen, you call your Hyde friend, that's the essence of what boarding school can do for you.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I mean, how do you see, the educational landscape has changed so much over the years. How do you see the future, and how would you like to see the future of education in boarding schools and just schools in general?
That's a tough question, and it's got a lot of aspects to it. First of all, take something like AI. We are seeing already that this is not something we can put our head in the sand about. It has changed the way these students and future generations are going to learn, and we have to embrace it. I think AI will actually help us become better at teaching some of the skills, because the one challenge in a boarding school is it's an expensive proposition.
Yeah.
Because you've got to bring in each teacher, each class that you want. So I can see some ways that AI can move us in a direction where, and also tap into, of course, the kids are tied into technology. And if we can help the kids, rather than get addicted to social media and negative tech, can we help the kids fuel that passion for technology in a positive direction? So that's exciting. And we, as older adults, we have to get on that bandwagon. Parents, place-based learning is just all been thrown out the window with COVID. So, and of course, a boarding school is a place-based community. But the parents aren't able to get here, or the parents from are all over the world. And so digitizing our programs that we have been working on to help educate all of our people who can't actually travel to the boarding school and make them feel part of the digital community. Those are all exciting things, and I think they are changes for the future. At the end of the day, though, it's that teacher sitting with that student making that magic happen.
Let's talk about teachers for a minute. And when you're looking for teachers, what's the gold standard teacher in your mind working with kids and making that magic happen?
First, I look for, are they a role model? That doesn't mean that their whole life has been a success throughout. In fact, I always ask the question, what's the toughest thing you've ever had to go through, and what did you learn from it? That always tells me a lot about people. So being a role model, being a person who believes in things like integrity, like courage, like leadership, like caring. And then, you're always looking at choices they've made. What kind of family are they from? Did they grow up in an incredibly supportive environment, or did they overcome a lot? And both of those are important because, again, you have a whole range of kids. It's a whole soup mix. Some kids act out, some kids act in. I was a student who looked like a winner, but again, inside, lost my dad, had some issues, had some anger, had some sadness. That wasn't ever put out. I was viewed as a winner in school, and so you always want to have adults that can represent different archetypes and different situations to the student.
Well, clearly, your parents had a huge impact on, but you're talking about teachers. Can you sort of go back memory lane and think of a teacher, a couple teachers that really helped bring that out of you and set the example for you?
We're always, I've had a lot of amazing teachers. I had a teacher here that was a coach and also taught me U.S. government and developed a passion for history. And he was a motivator, and he had us believing on that court like we could go out and we could go up against anybody, and we had a chance if we worked together. And so he instilled a lot of that in me. I had another teacher who was a woman, and she helped me to see that you can be strong as well as have a big heart. And then I had an English teacher. I had a flowery way of writing, and it was very kind of airy-fairy. And this guy just took me to task, and I still have kept some of the things I wrote initially with him. And he helped teach me how to write clearly, how to write succinctly, and that has always stuck with me.
That's great. And last, I know we've kept you a long time, but sort of last question for today, I'd ask you, their parents and students and people out there listening, what do you believe are the most critical skills that, teenagers, high school age students need to develop to succeed today in this world?
Well, as the studies now show, the word is grit. The word is a sense of who you are, the courage to go out and try to be who you are, even when you may not get the immediate acceptance. believing in yourself, believing in what you have, and then I think having the courage to set a high vision and the courage to go after something, and knowing that if you set a high vision, you're going to experience a lot of tension.
And how can parents, how can families help nurture these skills for their kids?
Obviously, as our students are growing, as our kids are younger, nurturing is a great word. As they start to move into adolescence, parents do more by micromanaging than stepping back and letting their child struggle, experience struggle, and they can actually do more by setting an example of how they're going after their life.
So it starts with the parents.
Always.
Well, that's awesome. Well, Laura, I just want to say thanks so much for being here today on our first podcast for Hyde Talk. Thanks for sharing your insights, your stories, and your experience with us. And it's been a real pleasure having you on our show.
Thank you, Bob.
So you've been watching Hyde Talk, and I'm Bob Felt. Thank you for listening, and be sure to join us on your favorite social media channels and check us out on your favorite podcast platforms. We'll see you next time.